Zooming in at the Unpopulist. I'm Landry Ayers. The first year of Donald J. Trump's second term as the President of the United States has been not only tumultuous for America. Just as at home, he has disregarded existing international institutions and standing alliances to chart a very different foreign policy course. Trump has threatened long-standing European allies with steep tariffs and military action, and traditional adversaries, such as Russia, with relative warmth and friendliness. Are there any broader theories guiding Trump's actions? What are the aims of his MAGA advisors? And what does the Trump presidency portend for America's standing as the champion of the liberal international order?
All good questions.
If that order permanently collapses, what will replace it? And how would that affect American interests? The Unpopulist's editor-in-chief, Shikha Dalmia, discusses with Pulitzer Prize-winning author Anne Applebaum, a historian. Anne, who writes for The Atlantic, has penned the most incisive and prescient analysis about the emerging alliance of global authoritarians, Russian disinformation campaign, the Ukrainian war, and more. We hope you enjoy.
The alliance of, the alliance is like what scares me the most.
Hi, Anne. Welcome to Zooming In.
These people will multiply.
I should tell our listeners, are
Trust
joining
me.
us from Warsaw. You divide your time between the United States and Poland, where your husband is foreign minister. You and I have been talking about doing this podcast ever since Trump came back to the White House. And at first, his foreign policy seemed extremely contradictory, unclear, so we didn't know where it was all going to land. Now, a year later, it seems we have a better idea of where he's going with this. And it seems pretty evident at this stage that he has very little interest in maintaining what we know as the rules-based liberal international order, which the United States itself created and championed after World War II. And one way to describe this shift that Trump is engineering is that it's some kind of isolationism where he's pulling out of traditional alliances, but has a strong defense which he'll use when America is directly threatened. That's the kind of thing that his anti-war supporters were hoping they would get. But it doesn't seem like isolationism quite captures what he's up to, right? It looks more like a complete retreat and also a tearing up of the liberal international order. How would you describe his foreign policy?
So first of all, I think it's really important to understand that all of these attempts to characterize Trump as having a foreign policy doctrine, what is Trumpism, isolationism, neo-imperialism, all of these miss something pretty fundamental about him, which is that he personally doesn't have a strategy and doesn't think in strategic categories. So he doesn't have a long-term plan. He doesn't think about how the actions he takes in one part of the world will impact another. He doesn't act consistently across spaces and across time. He doesn't act predictably in any way. And I think that's not a reflection of some ideology. I think that's a reflection of his personality. He has very clear instincts and whims. He's very interested in tariffs and has been all of his life. He dislikes America's alliances, both in Europe and in Asia, and has all of his life, going back to the 1980s. He admires leaders of autocratic states for their absolute power, and he has this instinct that he wants that kind of absolute power himself.
It's terrifying.
But he can also be pushed one direction or another by the moment, by a particular incident. He's very interested in whatever is the moment, whatever is the conflict, whoever he's talking to, that he emerge as the winner. He needs to win the situation or
I've
win
noticed that.
Exchange, whether it's
I think his support for Israel and his disdain for Ukraine is just simply because he doesn't.
Then you'll see much
knows
more
Israel will win and Ukraine
than you
may
see
not.
across foreign policy. Clearly, there are people around him who have ideas, and sometimes you see those playing out. I wouldn't use the expression liberal world order anymore, because I think that had been in decline for a long time. But he has no special regard for borders, for international law, for international institutions, for U.S. treaties that have held for a long time, whether it's the NATO treaty or the North American Free Trade Agreement, whatever it's called, something else now, but the same idea. So that instinct to break all the rules and that he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants. I don't know whether he's ever used the expression liberal international order and said to himself, I want to destroy it. But the effect of what he's doing and how he's behaving is that. He's not the only one who's doing this. I mean, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, his full-scale invasion, I should say, or even really the initial invasion in 2014, were also calibrated from the beginning to establish that Putin has the right to do whatever he wants and he doesn't care about the UN Charter or borders or norms or the UN Convention on Genocide or the Geneva Conventions on War. So he's also been pushing in that direction for a while, and there have been previous US presidents who've also pushed up against this. Not all of this is new, but yeah, it's clear that Trump is willing to break all of that. The best articulation of this so far came from the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, when he said that what we're watching in foreign policy isn't so much a transition from one system to another, but really a rupture. The speed with which Trump has shown that he just doesn't care about any long-term effects or deep relationships is remarkable, and it has been very much noted by America's allies wherever they are.
You're right. I mean, he may not have a worked out ideology or theory of foreign relations, but he does have a mentality, as you pointed out. He likes to do what he wants to do. He wants to dominate. He wants to control the world, not play by the rules. That's something he has in common with Putin. But there is an internal logic that mentality leads you towards. And some people have described it as spheres of influence, where each country that's dominant in a region dominates that region. And the great powers make deals to stay off each other's territory and also collaborate and have partnerships. And Witikoff and Steve Miller has definitely been talking about something like that, that the US is going to dominate the Western Hemisphere, and they may leave China to dominate the East and Russia, certain parts of Europe. So even though he may not be intending to go there, do you think the world is now going to fall into these spheres of influence with great powers dominating that sphere?
So 2 or 3 things to say. One is that the idea that the world is divided into 3 spheres of influence is a Russian idea. And there's a kind of Russian fantasy about the world divided in this way, and even a weird fantasy about Putin and Xi and Trump meeting together to divide up the world and creating some kind of new Yalta agreement, a new division of the world. And I heard someone expound and explain this idea very early on, not that long after the election, as a prediction of what would happen. And this idea, of course, originates with Russian propaganda. The Russians love this idea because it puts them on par with the US and China, which they aren't. The European economy put together is 10 times as large as the Russian economy, so there is no world in which Russia dominates Europe or has a sphere of influence like that. It is clear that there are also people in Trump's entourage. I mean, the authors of the National Security Strategy, Stephen Miller, Pete Hegseth, there have been several people who've used language that make it sound like the U.S. should return somehow to the Western Hemisphere. And sometimes the implication is that the U.S. would then also more or less abandon Europe and let the Europeans do their own thing, and also more or less abandon Asia and let China do its thing, and let the Japanese and the South Koreans and maybe the Indians and Filipinos worry about their own problems. So there is that tendency as well. Again, as I said, I don't think Trump himself has worked any of this out, but there are people around him who are pushing hard in this direction. Some of them have pushed very hard for the U.S. to stop aiding Ukraine, and the U.S. has actually stopped sending weapons to Ukraine, except for those that are bought with European money. There were a couple moments over the last year when actual weapons that were on their way that had already been sent by the Biden administration were blocked from inside.
It makes us, by the way, an unreliable salesman.
Again, this is from this group who believe the U.S. should now withdraw from everything. So there is that. That is, of course, in tension with Trump's interest in Iran. There's tension with Trump's ongoing interest, for example, he was very loud about and sounding angry about a recent EU trade deal with India. Also, I think made some comments about Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, also visiting China. He hasn't seemed to abandon the idea that the U.S. should have interests everywhere, but there is some kind of focus on the Western Hemisphere as well. If I'm sounding inchoate and unclear. That's because I think the policy is inchoate and unclear. So yes, there are some people who envision this spheres of influence world. Trump himself sort of buys some of it. He likes the idea of U.S. domination of its hemisphere. This very strange couple of weeks when he made it sound like he was ready to invade Greenland seems to have been a product of that. Somebody around him saying that Greenland is in the Western Hemisphere and also that it looks very large on the Mercator projection, and that seems to have interested him. But then when there was both a market reaction and a diplomatic and military reaction against it, he pulled back very quickly. So yes, I think that's part of his thinking, or not really his thinking, it's part of his administration's thinking, but it isn't very clear how exactly it would work.
Well, he has articulated what he calls the Monroe Doctrine, which is a riff of the Monroe Doctrine.
So, I mean, someone put that in his head too. And they just say that, the
He's
Monroe
not that
Doctrine
creative, that's true.
was originally, for everybody to remember what it was in history, it was a doctrine that European imperial powers shouldn't be allowed in the Americas.
You're right.
That was the original idea. And what he's saying is, no, I get to dominate the hemisphere. But again, what that would mean systematically is not that clear.
Well, I mean, the big difference between the Monroe and the Monroe Doctrine is that Monroe Doctrine actually visualized that the smaller countries in the Western Hemisphere would get to protect their sovereignty from rapacious European powers, whereas that's not what Trump has in mind. I mean, if you
He is
look
the
at what he's
danger.
done in Venezuela, this weird kind of meddlesomeness, at the same time, some weird isolationism. He went in, toppled Maduro, brought him to the United States to stand trial, but he's left that regime essentially in place. And the best we can tell is because they are playing ball with him when it comes to the country's natural resources and especially oil interests, right? So he's got this idea he can sort of dominate whoever he wants in this hemisphere, and they just have to suffer. I mean, like the whole old Thucydides quote, which is that dominant powers will do what they must and the weak will have to suffer as they should, or some version of that. I'm mangling that quote. But it is, very much what he's done in Venezuela and what he wanted in Greenland. They speak of this mentality of
I
domination.
survived.
So Venezuela is a peculiar story because, of course, there was a popular democracy movement in Venezuela, and they did indeed want Maduro gone, and they were not sad that he was gone, in other words. And so there was a lot of hope on that day when he was first captured that this would lead to a regime change. And you're right that it has not. Clearly, there are divisions in the administration. There was even one moment when Marco Rubio gave the legal reasons why this was justified, and Maduro had been condemned by a court in New York, and he was being on trial for violating law and so on. And then Trump very clearly said, no, it's all about the oil. And so this is, again, Trump's instinct, his transactionalism, his feeling that what we want out of other countries is not to benefit the citizens, not to create a better government, not to create a better democracy or a more legitimate government or more just government in Venezuela. Like, the point is just to take their oil and use it to benefit companies. And it's already emerging that there are companies that will be the immediate beneficiaries who have some relationship with Trump or his family.
What a shock.
So another element that's really important in his foreign policy is personal financial interest.
Yeah.
It's not as clear in Venezuela, but in Russia, for example, it's very, very clear. So
What
we
timeline are
know,
we
and
in
we
where the
know
president is
both from things that Steve
going by
Witkoff, the main
personal
negotiator in
financial
Ukraine, and Jared
interest?
Kushner, and also from reporting, especially in the Wall Street Journal, but also the Financial Times, we know that the negotiations he's conducting in Russia over Ukraine, there's this dual set of negotiations, and there's also conversations about U.S.-Russia business relations. And there have already been concrete offers to specific American companies, including some with links to Trump and his family. So what we're also looking at is completely unprecedented, I should say, in American history. And this is why we don't have a name for it or an ism, or a way of characterizing it, is we also see Trump and people around him using the power of the American
Corruption.
state, and so using the tools of American foreign policy to benefit specific people in the entourage of Donald Trump. And that's probably the case in Venezuela. It's very clear in Russia. There are also big Trump family interests now in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. And it's naive to imagine that those don't also affect U.S. foreign policy in that region as well. So, we see the immense power and might of the United States being shaped by private interests of the president. And that's not happened in America before. That's an aspect of it I think helps explain Venezuela, not entirely. I think it helps explain some of the Middle Eastern policy, and I think it also helps explain the policy towards Russia and Ukraine.
Especially Ukraine, right? I mean, the parallels between Ukraine and Venezuela are in this respect quite striking, that the peace deal, not the latest one, but last February, but even this one, what America was asking Ukraine to do in exchange for any kind of protection was taking over essentially the country's oil reserves, rare earth metal reserves, other things, into perpetuity. 50% of Ukrainian resources were supposed to be handed over to the United States. It's just not a deal that Zelensky could go for. And the one difference is that in the last peace plan that they proposed, they want Zelensky to hold elections after 100 days, whereas they are allowing the corrupt Maduro remnants to stay on. And the difference is, in my view, that Zelensky is not playing ball in the ravaging of his country in a way perhaps that Maduro...
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason is that this is something that Putin wants, because Putin's big goal in Ukraine hasn't changed. And so the big goal is to undermine the Ukrainian state, to put a puppet regime in place. He's failed to conquer it militarily, but to have a kind of Ukrainian regime in place that will be somehow more compatible with Russia. He wants to remove Zelensky, and he has convinced the Americans to help him remove Zelensky. And that's his goal with the elections. And then you would see play out in Ukraine what you saw recently in Moldova and Romania and elsewhere. You would see a kind of Russian campaign. And I'm not saying it would work, but they would certainly try to run an election campaign that would benefit Russia. So I think that's the purpose there. I mean, you're right that the U.S. pressure on Ukraine, both for the minerals and that crazy deal that was presented at the beginning, initially as a kind of fait accompli. A piece of paper was given to the Ukrainians, and they were told to sign it as if it were legal somehow, as if the Ukrainian president could sign away the country's mineral wealth in perpetuity. But the current negotiations are putting pressure on the Ukrainians to give up territory that Ukraine controls.
Right.
And that is also a Russian demand. And it's a Russian demand because the Russians also believe that this would weaken Ukraine and make Ukraine harder to defend. And so that's why the Ukrainians are resisting it. But you do see the U.S. playing along with Russian demands almost all the way through these negotiations.
How's it going? We were listening to
I ended up leaving work.
The U.S. hasn't yet, anyway, fully aligned itself with Russia, but you do see some alignment happening.
All good.
There are many.
Unpopulous? What?
Oh, we were listening to a podcast before you arrived. It's all good. What's up?
Oh, my bad.
No. We just waiting until someone jumped
Nothing,
in.
man. I've been, I ended up leaving work at like 4:30, got a haircut, and then my kiddos had to go get their clothes for Go Western Day. Down here in Texas, we have like a Go Western. I don't know if it's something throughout the United States or not.
I've never heard of it before. That sounds fun. Okay.
Yeah. Because we have the rodeo that comes into town in Houston and shit.
Well, that's fun. What's the latest?
So,
any thoughts on the State of the Union now that you've gotten to sleep on it?
So here's my thing. I've had some time to digest it. I've heard some feedback, some criticisms, comments, and concerns. So some people were complaining. I mean, the only real complaint I heard from the left, and it's usually it was like from one particular individual, was that Democrats should have walked out when Al Green walked out, and I've heard that criticism before.
I think he got kicked out, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think that it's a valid criticism, but as I've had time to debate it, to discuss it, and think about it, I think that, quite frankly, the Democrats were perfectly fine doing what they were doing. It was a lose-lose situation. The issue I'm talking about in particular is when Trump did the whole, stand up if you support Americans over illegal aliens or whatever.
Everybody should.
The thing is that
would have been funny. Stand up, yeah, we're standing up and walking out.
Well, the thing about it is that I think that was a lose-lose either way. I don't believe for a second that Trump didn't have something planned behind that, right? In case the Democrats did stand up. So, in the rare chance they did. And I don't think that, I heard some arguments of people saying, well, it gives them more ammunition. I'm like, he would have talked negative regardless. It was the classical, when was the last time you beat your wife kind of thing, right? It's like, it's a loaded question.
He would have said, like, give me some legislation now since you all agree with me.
Exactly, right.
No, I agree with you. I agree with
So,
this one.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, let me adjust something real fast because I have a really bassy audio. That's something for me, man, that I'm just kind of like, I think the State of the Union was really not all that great. Nothing extraordinary. People you'd expect to be there. My opinion hasn't completely changed really at all. Just wasn't there. I think the ratings were even coming back as one of the lowest watched in the century. There's some crazy thing like that. So it just was not all there. But there has been quite a bit of commotion over the past couple of days just with other things, whether it's the Hillary Clinton deposition, U.S. not being able to come to an agreement with Iran. It'd be kind of great if we had David in here to kind of talk about that a little bit, because I know he's big onto that. Oh no, as I'm saying this, I'm just seeing now from ASIN, Fox cornered Al Green, and I just saw this just now breaking as a minute ago. Fox asked Al Green, what is your priority, U.S. citizens or illegal aliens? My priority is the American Constitution. And Green said, my priority is the American Constitution, which protects you, aliens, and people in this country. And Fox said, so not U.S. citizens.
That's a really good answer by Green and a really terrible follow-up by Fox. That's tragic. This is just where Fox is the largest newscaster doesn't understand that Stephanie's standing up for the... Well, they understand it. They obviously understand it, but it's just pretend.
Well, yeah. So, that's kind of...
One thing that I thought...
But no, yeah.
You can tell me if you think this is like... if I'm wrong on this. I felt like a third of it was dedicated to just like things that were not... Like, there was like the...
Relevant?
Yeah, like there was the hockey team, and then there was the World War II vet, cool. And then, like, I don't know, I didn't see any, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're supposed to be... Am I wrong? Like, it just felt like there was...
No, I mean, the thing is that I think a lot of people do not understand that elections, especially, have to do with the pocketbook. Time and time and time again, it has been proven true. And I think
the economy's stupid.
Exactly. I mean, it's that simple. Because here's the thing: is a lot of people who are in this bubble of like thinking that, your niche issue is so important, whether it be immigration or whether it be, whatever. That doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't matter to the average American. The average American goes about their 9-to-5 job, and I've had some reflection about this as well as I've been sitting here thinking. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about this, like, because I've had some conversations about what my life would look like if I was not so ingrained. Like, literally, when I paused, it was because I was responding to something on X. Is like, what would my life look like if I was not politically involved? And I've got my wife to look at, because my wife, she doesn't get involved politically. So, like, she's just not. She goes about her 9-to-5 job. If I were to tell her who our state representative or senator was, she wouldn't be able to name them, let alone name who the VP is, okay, to be quite frank. And I think that that's kind of how you need to start thinking about normal voters. We kind
Yeah, of
of
course.
have this biases where we look at what we love and think that applies to everybody else in the world. It doesn't.
It does not.
So
That's one of the reasons
number
why I
one thing
think
that-
the most important, like, policy is important and all, but like vibes is just so important, because like that's what trickles down to the people who aren't super paying attention. You got to have good vibes,
Yeah.
or else like I think your election chance goes up in smoke.
Well, and I think again too, it depends on the community as well. Because, for example, with the immigration may not matter to a suburban, white family who is going about their 9 to 5 life, but it might matter. The immigration issue might matter to somebody who may be, a minority in inner city or even suburban. It don't even have to be necessarily just in one particular
Yeah.
region. So immigration might be an issue for them as well, and they will be more politically involved because they have been politically affected by this policy. But the other issues outside of those two, I just don't see them being that big of an issue. And the idea that Trump making that comment about Americans or illegal aliens, fine, you got your one little clip, but we've got 20 of yours.
Yeah.
It's go ahead and run on that. It's not going to win you anything.
No, I agree. I think that wow, I'm really truly stuck. I think Trump is very much kind of stuck where he's at, and I don't really see him coming back these days. I think that he's just kind of. I think the Republicans are kind of screwed on the midterms because
I
the
agree.
pocketbook is just not getting better.
No, it's not. It's not getting better, and I think that
This economy
ultimately,
is also just like really not like this job market is just not doing it for me, man. I don't know if you're like job hunting, but I've got some people hunting, and it is a market.
Brutal.
Have you been like
yeah,
hunting?
I'm not. I haven't been looking. I am just actually coming up on my 1 year with being the company that I'm at now, and I'm fortunately very content with it. But
I'm happy for you.
yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what people are going through right now, and especially those who are in blue collar positions as well. I mean, just statistically speaking, if you look at this, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, people in manufacturing, people in construction, people in those kinds, and it affects, by the way, more than just blue collar, because naturally, if manufacturing is having a really tough time, the subsidiary,
Yes.
white collar employees are also going to have effects as well, because that means that manufacturing business isn't doing that well either.
Timothy Snyder has been saying for a decade the U.S. is going where Eastern Europe has been in 30 years. Applied postmodernism as the leading political philosophy, which is basically nobody believes real change is possible, so it's a culture war and owning the enemies. There is definitely the lack of optimism is eroding this country, like very much so. Yeah, I think there might be onto something there. Jeez. Yeah, we need to get people back on the optimism train sooner than later, in my opinion.
I agree. I think we can get there. It's just going to take some time, and I think that it's going to be very interesting too. I think Texas. I'm growing more and more optimistic as we get closer to midterms and seeing just some of the, preliminary information coming out. Let me see if I can find the actual one here. I want to see where they're at currently. I think it was at like 102% of turnout. Let me see.
Did you see some of the breakdowns? Apparently, like, there's like a big, like, this is kind of like the Crockett Tallarico thing is actually turned into a little bit of a race war with African Americans overwhelmingly going with Crockett and Tallarico. And that's not fun, because that's sign for
I know.
divided.
I'm hoping that this doesn't turn
Personal.
I don't want this to end up being trying to find it here. I'm trying to find the freaking forecast here. Let's see, analysis maybe? Elections. On Vote Hub. Projects, analysis, polls. Anyways, no, I think my problem is that us having Texas and having this choice between, Crockett and Tallarico, I worry when it comes to the general election that we're gonna end up having those who support Crockett staying home. And I hope that doesn't go that way.
Yeah, that's worst case scenario. I've seen some polling saying she's actually in the lead, but I've also seen polling that say that Tallarico's in the lead, and it's just like very odd that I don't know. Have you seen any polling in one way or the other? Hello, who joined?
Yo, there's David.
There he is.
Hey, real quick. So I'm looking at this as of right now, and this is fascinating stuff.
What are you looking at?
Let me see. I'm looking at the polling coming out of Texas. Kamala Harris, Texas. Vote totals.
Hedgehog, it really depends on also Congress, because I don't know, like Congress needs to the Congress needs to be democratic for these issues to be fixed. And the other thing is like your ability. This is one of the things I feel very much so. And I'll let you go back again, Vince. Is that like a lot of people's feelings on whether or not the problem is fixed? That's like actually a very interesting question, because like if you are in some sort of echo chamber that tells you the problem is only fixed like superficially, like one of the things that Biden struggled with was that a ton of people thought that would say that their finances are fine or good, but they thought the country was going in the wrong direction, which is like, a weird thing, right? So there was I think Biden had a perception issue, and his economy had a big perception issue more than, arguably more than an actual inflation issue. But there was an inflation issue. Hey, Chief.
Yes.
Going OG.
Not just that, but even though some people might be doing well, they felt that they should be doing better, right?
True.
Which is an odd thing, because okay, he improved, and you're going to go back for the guy where things were worse.
Yeah. So I'm looking at right here, 2026 Texas Democratic primary. Right now, the Democratic vote with 1,018,000 guys. This is crazy to me. So Kamala Harris drew out 4.8 million people in the Texas presidential election. The Senate was for Colin Allred. That's actually even more interesting when you look at this. I didn't realize it was this differential. That is actually startling. I don't know how I didn't see this before. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of numbers, but follow.
So really quick, sorry. This guy asked about like crime being up in the U.S., or being higher in the U.S. than the EU. The thing is like it's just that can be true, but also like keep in mind like people think trans people probably like are like mentally unwell and are like killing lots of people. Like I don't know if it's like solving the problem is important or just getting good vibes is important anymore. It's kind of weird, but I'm wondering if that's the new meta in politics. But I want Vince to finish before I get someone's opinion on that.
Yeah, so here's the interesting thing. Texas actually had more split than I thought they did. So under the presidential vote, they had a 14% differential between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, right? A 14% differential. But in the Senate race, they only had a 9% differential. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's Texas. Now, catch this.
Yeah.
Check this out. So far, just with early voting, Democrats have had 162.9% of the 2022, or I guess this is early voting primary or something. I'm not sure how to read this, but it's 162%. Right now, they've already casted 1 million ballots. Republicans have only cast 872,000 or 85% of the 2022 final. The ironic part of this is that there's been 34,000 votes by mail for the Republicans versus 39 for Democrats. So I don't want to celebrate too early, but Republicans.
Yeah, and it is. Let's put a note out there. It is way too early, right?
I agree.
This is great. It's great news, but this momentum has to be maintained, not just in level of support, but in people actually getting out there to vote.
Agreed. Now the numbers get crazier if you like playing with the numbers a little bit, because as of today, I guess I'm assuming based on how I'm reading this, it must be early voting numbers, not so much when it says final, I don't know. But anyways, it says 2022 as of today. Comparative to that, it's 275%. So I said, great news. I'm not going to celebrate until, it's final, but that would be shocking if we can flip Texas blue. And I didn't even think I could say that Texas is going to be swing state, because who's up for re-election right now in the Senate?
Not the other guy, not Ted Cruz. John Cornyn.
No, it's Cornyn, but I'm saying generally we thought the Senate was going to go to Republicans. It was a write-off. We're yeah, Senate is going to be Republican.
I mean, they gerrymandered it just for that, and it's blowing up spectacularly in their face.
Agreed. Beautifully.
And let this be a lesson for generations.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering is awful. We need to get rid of it. Red states, blue states, all of it. It's horrible for our democracy. But also, sometimes it just spectacularly doesn't work, even for the corrupt politicians who put it in place.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I still don't know if there's going to be enough. I'm looking at Republicans. We have West Virginia up, which is Shelley Capito, Bill Cassidy in Louisiana, Susan Collins in Maine. I don't know too much about that race. I've heard some whispers of it, but nothing coherent that I can understand.
How do you think that, going off a comment that one of our viewers is asking, how should Democrats address crime? Because when people go after talk about crime in U.S. cities, and people go it's getting better, which is true, but it also feels sometimes a little tone deaf. Do you guys have a suggested way of talking about it?
Yeah, and there's I think we need to go full throttle after government worker crime, which is not counted in the crime statistics, right? But you look at the majority of those killed in Minnesota, and they've been killed by ICE this year, right? And we need to call that what it is. That is crime, even if the charges are not being pressed. And we need to push hard to get it added to official statistics. When there is, when it's not in self-defense, which it clearly wasn't, right? Or even if it's ambiguous, we need to get these added to the crime stats, because, we are seeing an atrocious level of crime from ICE, and it is not being counted in the official statistics, and that's a problem.
So I'm gonna push back respectfully. What do you do when they go, okay, people have been killed by ICE, but 90% of them have been killed by black gangs or blah blah blah, undocumented immigrants, whatever, right? Blah blah blah. My point is, I'm worried they're gonna say that's a deflection or just a rhetorical flourish. Gerrymandering's crazy in the U.S.
Of course you're going to say that for the election, and that's part of why we need to start including this in the statistics. When ICE drops off a blind guy in a snowstorm without telling anyone to pick him up, that's a murder, right? And we need to start counting that as a murder, and start pointing out that MAGA is playing games with these statistics and that they're totally fake, right? Because now that they're in the government, they get to commit all their murders as part of the government. And no, we do not give them a pass. And we need to continue that through, because when Democrats are in office, they're going to charge the people responsible for the crimes that they are responsible for. We're not going to let this slide.
No, I agree.
Just crazy. It's going to be like nearly, 3 years before we actually see crimes. I mean, luckily there's not a statute
See
of limitations
charges
for this shit. But still.
Unless, of course, Donald Trump decides to do some mass pardoning event, which could happen.
So
Well,
pardons are limited. He can only pardon federal crimes, cannot pardon state crimes, and he cannot pardon international crimes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is that like if you planned it strategically and you waited to charge them until after Trump's out of office, if we get a Democratic president, then you won't certainly have the federal immunity be brought up against it, so the state charges will be able to go forward with it. So, that's a kind of sad thing that sucks about this entire thing is that I can see a situation where it's similar to like Obama, right, where your first few years in office, if we get a Democratic president, they're going to spend their first probably term, honestly, doing cleanup.
Yeah.
It's going to be cleaning up all of the mess, trying to make sure they undo all the legislation that needs to be undone, hell, tearing down the shit that he builds. And unfortunately, it's going to clog up their whole first year.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
And trials, investigations, all that.
And what I'm honestly afraid of, if we do it wrong, some people are just going to run on this and say, "Oh, I'm just going to reverse everything. I'm going to turn everything back on." We can't go backwards, right? Because if these programs hadn't been destroyed, they would have changed. They would have adapted, right? And there were some problems. We have future challenges. We're going to have to move forward. We're going to have to rebuild everything while keeping an eye not on the past but the future. Not everybody can do that.
Right. I got a question here. What's the historic roots for gerrymandering? Why did it happen originally? Was it for racist reasons, or was there something else going on? Just to get power?
It was for power. It was just to stay in office. Now, it's often gone with race, right? Because it's well known that certain races vote for certain parties, right? And which party and which race has changed over periods of time. In the 1860s, I mean, African Americans voted predominantly Republican, right? That changed in the 20th century to where it flipped around. So, and there are other groups as well. And in the past, they might have been looking at Irish and Italians, right? Various different minority groups that we don't even really count today.
Okay. And then the second question
the reason is still the same: to get a safe district and not have to worry about your reelection.
Okay, and the second question is, strange to me that you argue about blame instead of underlying economic reasons. Medical debt, lack of welfare, lack of opportunity. Okay. Did one of us do that? Sorry if we did. What do you think of? I guess we just have to address these issues. Did you guys
What's
get that?
the question there?
There wasn't. It was just a criticism of one of us who argued that we talked about blame. Oh, it was me. No, I wasn't saying, for the record. Okay, then it's just for me to clarify. I wasn't saying that black gangs or whatever. I was saying that Republicans are going to use that argument and how we would counter it. And that's a good counter, is to say, like, there's underlying issues, but I don't know how well that's going to vibe with voters, unfortunately. But you are correct. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see. David, I wanted to ask you while we have you here. I don't know if you kept up to date with what took place today with the Iran talks, but I think it's very interesting because I'm getting more and more vibes that the U.S. is essentially pushing for them to have zero uranium enrichment. And Iran seems to be saying, like, look, we're willing to come down, but we're not willing to go down to zero. And they're kind of like, hey, we'll visit
You're cutting out.
Yeah, you cut out there.
No, I'm sorry. My wife came in the garage. So the thing about it is that like I'm wondering like to what extent we're going to see military action. I've even seen rumors to suggest that the U.S. is waiting for Israel to strike Iran first, so that they can get justification to then go in and strike Iran as a defensive maneuver to gain more popular support instead of striking first.
So the issue here, I think we're a little bit safe for the time being, is that Trump just claimed great success in his State of the Union on Iran, midnight hammer, right? So he can't really admit that he didn't destroy the Iranian nuclear program, because that's what he claimed, right? And he can't use that as a justification. And he's late on using the mass slaughter of Iranian civilians as a justification, unfortunately.
Especially after
tens of thousands have been murdered.
I also would imagine it's really hard to use it after you promise to aid them and they go out in the streets and then you kind of abandon them. That didn't really look super good. I can imagine it doesn't.
I mean, and what he should be doing, what he refuses to do for pretty much all of our allies, is he should be arming them, right? Going back to the US.
Could he be theoretically arming but not telling people? I mean, I'm just to play devil's advocate.
I mean, if there was a major presidential armament, we would see it. It could be that the CIA or some other groups are doing some arming in the background on a smaller scale. But the type of armament I'm talking about would be large scale, right? Like when we armed Ukraine 4 years ago, initially during the Russian invasion. We didn't send them tanks and heavy weapons right away, but we sent them a whole bunch of portable missile launchers, right? Stingers, javelins, and that was very visible. Stuff was exploding. We're not seeing that in Iran, right? The Iranian military is trampling over civilians, mass murdering them, and their stuff is not getting blown up. So large-scale American arms delivery is not happening. And that is literally a tragedy, because that has resulted in tens of thousands of civilian deaths where they could have had a chance to fight back.
See that?
Yeah.
So that guy was talking, so I misunderstood his message. So basically what he was saying was we're sort of arguing about, like, crime is this person's fault or crime is this thing's fault. Instead, we should be arguing more about, like, we should be talking. Should we be when discussing crime? Should we be talking more about the socioeconomic reasons, or does that put people to sleep and we should just be saying, like, cool catchphrase? Like, I don't want to say catchphrase, but like much more maybe like witty comebacks, like it's the GOP's ICE. That is, what do you think?
I don't think we're there right now, because I think the crime we really have to deal with is the crime that is being done by masked government thugs, right? All around our country. We saw it in Minnesota on the TV for a while, but it's still going on and the news is not covering it. And we've really got to be talking about that. And people are still dying because of ICE and Border Patrol every day, right? And it's not just immigrants, for those who have no empathy for people who don't have American citizenship. Americans are suffering too.
Now I really care. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Yeah. We have comments in the Discord here as well. MOD launches review into whether Epstein used RAF bases. So that's British military. And I do want to talk about that because while nothing is happening on Epstein here in the States, Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna keep talking about it, but nothing happens because Republicans are stonewalling. They don't want to know about Epstein's crimes and who assisted him. But our allies in Europe, they've got enough information. They're moving forward with investigations. And, we only know so much yet, but there's got to be a lot that they can turn over. And I do expect and hope that we see some convictions here out of this. Plus, hopefully a few revelations that can be used to get more out of the guilty who are here in the U.S.
So now I got a question, David. We're now 2 days removed from the State of the Union. What did we already ask you about that? I think we might have actually.
Well, we talked about it that night. The State of the Union, really, it was a really long-winded nothing burger overall, which is, probably fairly good by Trump standards. He didn't go on too crazy of a rant, but there was nothing there but self-aggrandizement, self-promotion, some of his usual stump politicking. But nothing really of significance, nothing newsworthy.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm just reading this article real quick from Politico about churches and ICE. And Judge Pan on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals recently mused that in an age of administrative warrants, churches may be "quote unquote" safer than your home. It's crazy, man.
Well, ICE has been storming churches lately.
Yeah.
So not necessarily without warrants.
It still blows my mind that they're allowed to go into schools. Like, come on, man. There's nothing sacred.
Yeah, that is messed up. It has always been policy for federal agents not to go into schools without a warrant. But there's no law actually that stops them because they are government facilities, right? If they have permission from the school district or whatever the governing authority is, then yeah, they can enter it. The so-called gun-free zone.
Just depressing.
Which is rather frightening when, they're there and it's children and even adults are not capable of defending themselves legally.
Republicans are freaking out about this midterm. Even Trump is like freaking out.
I mean, he's about to. He was thinking about passing like a executive order to just.
Auto he wants to have executive orders to change how elections are done, but that's not how our system of government works.
That's not gonna. That won't stop him. He doesn't know how to read.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if he just took the curtain back and read the Constitution that sits in his Oval Office.
Well, my very serious, real fear is that we may see something like January 6th on steroids. Particularly, I don't see him holding back from using all his ICE thugs. He wants to have people vote in person. And it wouldn't surprise me if he has, ICE gunmen there and we have Russian-style elections as what he wants.
Oh, that's terrifying. I know we're firing off a million things at once. Apparently, the FAA closes airspace in Fort Hancock, Texas, reportedly after Pentagon, quote-unquote, accidentally uses a military laser-based anti-drone system to shoot down a U.S. government drone.
Oh, that was from a couple weeks ago.
No, this is new.
Wait, why?
This is another one.
Oh, this is another one?
Another one, yeah.
I'm already.
Is it a balloon again?
I don't know. From what I've understood from reading this story, and this seems to be a similar story, is that you have two different governmental agencies that are operating independently and are afraid to talk to each other about it. So, like, the Border Patrol will send a drone up, right, without letting the military know. And the military is like, oh, hey, let me go and we detected a drone. And then they, like, shoot down the drone or whatever. It's like one hand not talking to the other kind of thing is what I think from what I've heard.
Oh, yep. Recent news. 2 weeks ago and today.
A well-designed system or something, I guess.
Yeah, it says, this is from Reuters, FAA closes airspace in Fort Hancock, Texas after reported accidental use of anti-drone laser. The Federal Aviation Administration barred flights on Thursday in an area around Fort Hancock, Texas, after lawmakers said military laser-based anti-drone system was believed to have been used by the Pentagon to accidentally shoot down a U.S. government drone. The FAA and Pentagon did not immediately comment, but the FAA cited, quote, special security reasons in its notice about the restrictions on the airspace near the Mexican border. That's crazy.
Wow. Oh, at least it wasn't a party balloon this time.
Yeah, it was a CBP. I was right. Congressional aid tells Reuters the Pentagon was believed to have used a high-energy laser system to accidentally shoot down the CBP drone near the Mexican border. So yeah, it's basically one hand not talking to the other. That's basically what's going on.
Yeah, it's going to happen more and more. I don't know if you guys
Why
saw
is
the
it gonna
news
happen
from
more and more?
Sweden. Sweden shot down a Russian drones. So I'm sure this type of thing is putting a lot of countries, including the U.S., on a higher alert. Russian drone was going after a French ship, and Sweden shot it down.
Interesting. Hey, guys, I gotta bounce. I gotta go get some dinner. But I wanted to come on because I know I did not respond like I should have for today.
No, it's all good.
I didn't know if we were still doing it today. After we did the whatchamacallit, State of the Union. So. But keep an eye out on the news, guys. Listen, if you're watching this on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it may be, make sure you're following Project Liberal. And if you're not already, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. And also, please, please, please make sure you are following Project Liberal. We go on live every week.
Man. You guys shout yourself out too.
Listen. But yes, my name is the Vince Wilson Show. I stream Wednesdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I go over the week's news, and I am trying to expand upon that to do debates on TikTok, but those two don't really go hand in hand. There's an audience for one and not the other, so we're working on it. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna go. Y'all have a great one, and stay frosty, y'all. Stay frosty.
So I wanted to finish up with that bit of news there. Sweden didn't technically shoot it down. They used electronic warfare and jammed it and sent it crashing into the sea. But it was a Russian drone. It was pursuing the French Charles de Gaulle, aircraft carrier. Yep, and that was in port in Sweden. So they're getting. Russia's getting more and more aggressive. They also attacked a train in Ukraine that was carrying U.S. General Ben Hodges. And this was a knowing attack. They were clearly targeting him, trying to kill him. So this was basically an attempted assassination of a U.S. government person. Now, General Hodges is known for being a Ukraine supporter. Right, and being critical of Russia. But still, it's new and alarming that they're willing to go after American critics.
That is insane.
And, if we had a stronger president...
Where was this attempt?
This was in Ukraine on a train, and the train was actually hit. It's reported that the roof of the train was blown off.
Jeez Louise. That is terrifying. Man, they must, she gotta do it, I guess, man. It's terrifying.
Yeah, and any other president would have sent a serious response to Russia to deter future aggression. And the fact that we don't have a quick and immediate response, that Trump's once again showing a soft underbelly to Russia, is just going to invite more violence.
Very frustrating.
The thing about a bully is that, they don't stop until they're made to stop.
Yeah. That's for sure. I had a question for you. I was doing some Googling recently, as I do often. I discovered this idea, or this concept called national liberalism. Are you familiar with it?
National liberalism as opposed to nationalist liberalism?
Maybe that's the same thing.
Yeah, it might be. I'm familiar with attempts at a nationalist liberalism, which is like dry wet, in my opinion.
Can you go through it? Because I only discovered it like a few hours ago, and I'm just curious.
Yeah,
currently, it's unknown whether
here.
it went down in the water.
National liberalism is a variant of liberalism combining liberal policies and issues with elements of nationalism. Right, so it's another attempt to rebrand the so-called nationalist liberalism.
Okay.
which has also been called conservative liberalism. Now the thing is that these are two contradictions, right?
Yes.
So the more nationalism you introduce to any philosophy, the less liberalism you have, right?
Yep.
Nationalism being different from patriotism, right? It's okay to be patriotic, to love your country, whatever it is, but nationalism is the idea that my country is for my people and my people only, and my country is better than your country. And if my country's stronger than yours, then we should use that strength against you because you are clearly wrong. All right, that is nationalism.
Yes. Is there like a balance between national liberalism and that, to say that, like, oh, we love our country, but we want to have like shared values, but also, we don't want to invade people. Is there you said it's wet you said it's wet dry, so I guess your answer.
And yeah, there's a balance. One wins, the other loses, right?
Yeah.
There is no happy medium. There's no resting point between liberalism and nationalism, right? So any system that tries to balance those, there's nothing real for it to balance on. They're opposing philosophies. One has to eventually, over time, annihilate the other. Yeah, there's no room for a happy middle. Now, what is liberalism? Liberalism is the idea of rule of law, right? That it doesn't matter who you are, where you're born, right? That all of us are equal. We have inalienable rights. And when you really get to liberalism, then it doesn't matter where the borders are drawn because everyone's treated well. Everyone's treated consistently. It's not that we're against nations. We just, in the ideal liberal society, the nation should be irrelevant.
I think it's a new thing. I don't think it's. Someone's asking, is that liberalism in the 19th century that was national against class systems of the time? That's not what I'm referring to. So in short, it seems like you think that it's just like a contradictory philosophy.
Yeah.
There's no reconciling it. You don't see it as like legitimate, I guess.
No, there's no happy middle. It's like Marxist capitalism, trying to have a hybrid, in which you're laughing, and you should, but many countries have tried to find a balance between them, including the Soviet Union. Like, okay, we're gonna privatize a little bit of things, right? Or China, we're gonna privatize a little bit of things, and they do start to do that, but there's no resting point, right? There is no resting point. It leads to strife, upheaval, social unrest, because there is no balancing point, whether in law or society, between opposing ideologies like that.
Let's see.
Yeah. So nationalism, either the nation is everything, or individual human liberty is everything, right? And I'm on the side of liberty, right?
Was Lenin's economic policy Marxist capitalism? I don't know if Lenin was a Marxist capitalist.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Someone asked, wasn't Lenin's new economic policy kind of Marxist capitalist?
That's an interesting debate. I would put it firmly in the field of Marxism, but I can see where some would make that argument. Lenin himself thought of it more as transitional. He was trying to transition from a capitalist society to a fully Marxist one. His ideas were never fully implemented because they were supposed to get rid of currency, which never happened in the Soviet Union. Right. So I would say no, but there's an argument because it did allow for some temporary free markets.
Okay. Good question. Okay. And so you're a fan of individual liberty, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Firmly.
Part of the same, you're part of the right group then. Okay, I was
I'm-
curious. The reason I thought it would be interesting is because I know that where, the J.D. Vances of the world are at right now is like this, I think it's called national conservatism, which is like, this
Yes.
just ideology of just like culture is the only thing that's important and all that jazz. And so the idea of the national liberal movement that my 15 minutes of reading has led me to is that they're basically trying to create high trust societies that are also liberal. So now comes the question, do you think... I'll answer in a second. So the question, I guess, now is how do you create a high trust liberal society? Because right now we doesn't feel,
That's a good question. And, it actually has a pretty simple answer to me. That's been expressed many times. That is the rule of law and the fair and just distribution of the rule of law, right? To where, law may not be perfect, but at least we know how it's going to work. There's a system, there's rules, we all play by it. Not like, as we saw today, Mayor Mamdani called up Trump and got, favors. Oh, this person's going to be released, right? Because it's not based on what they did. Their arrest was not based on what they did. It was based on who they know, who your friends are, right?
Yep.
And in a liberal society, there's no room for that. It's all based on merit.
Yeah, one of the things, and we're going to get onto that question about Cuba in a second. One of the things that just people don't, like, it's one of the reasons I get just so mad at people who are like, no, Trump is fine, like, he just says some things, he's a little bit weird, blah, blah. It's just like these norms are just so important, and they're impossible to just buy. You can't just, like, buy a new set of norms. And to see Trump just, like, go up and, like, smash norms and just be so blatantly corrupt that, like, the mayor of New York City just strokes his ego a bit and gets, like, a political favor. It's just like, oh my god, like, how are we going to continue to function as a country? It's just
that's what you're describing there. It is the literal definition of tyranny, where instead of the rule of law, we have the rule of rulers, right? And you want to know how it functions, you look at Russia, right? Where you do what the strong man says, or else he'll kill you.
Yeah.
But it's horribly corrupt. Nobody loves it except the people at the top.
Yeah, of course. So now we got a question about Cuba. What are your feelings on this whole Cuba thing? Are we gonna invade Cuba? Do you think Trump is gonna do you think there's a world where we're gonna invade them?
Well, we're not at all in position to invade Cuba. We sent our carrier fleets. They're sitting off Iran right now. And it's one thing to have the logistics to supply things around the world, but it's another to offload that many troops into Cuba. Not happening, doesn't look like it's happening. What you're seeing is that we've completely ceded the moral high ground to a brutal communist regime. They just killed a bunch of people in speedboats. They said they have guns. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But really, after we killed a bunch of people in speedboats, there's no moral high ground. There's no real argument. And I predict that we might get some propaganda pieces or whatever, but it's probably mostly going to slide, because I don't think anything else can be done about it. And on the more worst case scenario, maybe we find out some years from now that Trump was attempting some kind of special forces operation or whatever. And those were Americans on a mission who got killed. At this point, we don't really know. We don't know who these Americans were that got killed.
Yeah. I remember that. Huh. So now comes an interesting question. I was listening to some debates earlier today. What the heck can be done? So I'm hearing people talking about, I don't know if you've heard this phrase, but Nuremberging the Republican Party after Democrats come into power. What can we do to actually truly assert liberalism, in every way possible, like as a norm, as a policy, and also just to get rid of this national, like to get rid of the J.D. Vances of this world and the Donald Trump and the strongmen of this world. It's an easy question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Nuremberg, Nuremberg was a very specific thing. We had International War Crimes Tribunal. The Allies that were victorious in World War II came together and put together what is the international law at this point, right? And that has kind of completely broken down. It is a shambles. The U.S. is not enforcing international law. Russia is not enforcing international law. France and Britain are not really capable of enforcing international law, so of course they're not. So really there is none. And, the international courts of justice have been really kind of highly politicized. So there's no place for that. However, we do have, as corrupted as the organizations are, we have a good system of American justice. We need to restore it. We need to have some very principled people take over the Department of Justice, right? They're going to have to clean house, and we're going to have some honest trials. And before that, we're probably going to need to have some serious impeachments. The best form, and people aren't aware, so not all impeachments are the same. There are different constitutional articles you can impeach for. One that people really need to know right now is Article 2, Section 4, because that can remove the entire administration at once. It is a high bar under Article 2, Section 4.
What's needed?
It's not as simple. It's not as simple as crimes and misdemeanors, right? Certainly we have that, and we could impeach individual people. So Article 2, Section 4 is for basically betraying the country, right? Not necessarily as far as outright treason, but I would say, like what we've seen, an assault upon the Constitution, possible compromat or comprising material where we have improper deals going on with Russia, right? So that could be a cause for Article 2, Section 4, either one. But we'll see with the new Congress if they'll go for that. And if Republicans were smart, they would protect themselves with some impeachments right now, because if you removed, Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth, and some of the others who are obviously legally compromised, Pam Bondi, there would be a lot less grounds for it. And then they would still be able to retain some. But I think there is a decent case to be made for Article 2 impeachment. I'm going to have to look up the exact wording. Okay. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Yeah, I think there's many obvious cases of bribery for the Trump administration.
Oh God, dude, just the Trump coin, man. I'm still shocked that we're just like, that's just like, the like Trump coin, like no one just, and the Republicans can't hold him accountable at all. Did I ever tell you about what Ben Shapiro said about the Qatari jet? He was
no, I don't think you did.
So when I saw Ben, I wanted to see his opinion on the Qatari jet, because I know that he, does not like Qatar. And so I was like,
yeah,
okay, so
and let me give some credit where it's due. Ben Shapiro tries to have principles.
Tries.
Yeah, he tries. He always, I think, ends up folding on them because his loyalty is to the Republican Party first. But he tries to have principles. He's an old school conservative, trying to keep his place in the MAGA Republican Party.
So he basically said that like he opposed the Qatari jet because it looks bad.
Looks bad.
It looks bad, exactly. He didn't say it is bad. He just said it looks bad.
And that's a nice little waffle, because if if Trump ever was impeached for that particularly, he could say, "Oh, well, I said it looked bad, and there was really something there, right?"
Yeah, I opposed it. There you go. I said it was bad, guys. Like, what? What else do you need from me?
Wait, was it? Yes. So the new incident in Texas today was they shot. The U.S. military shot down a U.S. Border Patrol drone. Maybe I should talk a little bit about that. I've been reading a lot about drones lately, and
I heard America
American
has
press.
its first kamikaze drone.
Huh.
I heard we have our first suicide drone.
I have a hard time believing it's really a first, but maybe. But that's so far behind where Russia and Ukraine are at.
Yeah, Ukraine
Right.
is. I think I read somewhere that 80% of their losses are suicide drones.
That's an old number. It was 80% a year ago.
Yeesh.
Yeah, and that's doesn't mean the drone is directly killing them, right? But often, for instance, a drone is the spotter that gives the coordinates for artillery, for instance. Or the drone may spot someone so that a sniper can take them out because they were unaware of them beforehand. Though there are very few snipers now in the era of drone warfare. If you are up and above ground and moving around, drones find you very fast. Ukrainian recruits, we're not talking about experienced military people. Fresh recruits have had exercises with NATO. They use their drones, very basic drones, not combat drones, just surveillance drones. And, they wiped NATO forces, right? And that's not even with what Ukraine is doing currently. We are very far behind. And our principal, military enemies or competitors, Russia and China, they are not behind. China is doing very...
They're doing a purge right now.
In fact, it's really... We talk about Russia because they're the ones at war, but it's really Chinese drone technology right now. Ukraine has really devastated Russia's ability to manufacture drones, hitting several key components like fiber optics. All the fiber optics are coming from China. China has engineers and officers embedded in the Russian military, and they're the ones seeing how these drones work, and they are upgrading the designs and modernizing their military. China is even putting on shows of their drones. They're keeping the best for themselves and just, mass marketing this for Russia. Russia keeps the world distracted while they prepare for an invasion of Taiwan next year. And that is...
Ooh. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do in the invasion of Taiwan? I'm scared, man.
They appear to be full speed ahead. In an invasion of Taiwan, you and me are going to massively suffer. I hope Trump is not president. We need a very strong response to that. It needs to be shut down right away. As I've told people, I'm not exaggerating. Day one of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, 10% of the world economy dies overnight.
Yeah.
That is just because shipping stops through the South China Sea, right? You can't move stuff through a war zone. More prolonged, more damage it does. All of our high-end semiconductor chips, they come from Taiwan. And in fact, American cell phones, American computers, American missile guidance technology, all kinds of stuff. We will have what we have and nothing else. So even our military capabilities, our military industry will come to a crashing halt. It's bad with a capital BAD. We need to do whatever we can to stop this from happening, and our weak approach to Russia is just making it more likely. If Russia were stopped hard today, then I guarantee you that China would, not be going for Taiwan. They would reconsider.
One of the things I've noticed is he keeps talking about peace by strength, and then it's like, but then Ukraine, it's like I need to clip the wings of Ukraine. Like that, it's never made any sense. Like, if you want to be peace by strength, be peace by strength. But Ukraine needs strength. Like, what's going on?
And he's not demonstrating strength. Strength is not when you go in and you beat up a little country like Venezuela, right? It's not when the big dude beats on the little dude. It's when the big guy fights the other big guy and, either gets him to back down or beats him up, right? Or when the little guy, like Ukraine, is demonstrating more strength than any other nation in the world right now because after 4 years, they have not been beaten, right? And, in fact, Russia has been pushed back year after year. They're throwing their men away, and despite some advances, overall, they are just being completely attrited. But both nations are getting wrecked, and we need to put it to a real stop. Not this, we had some ridiculous statements from Marco Rubio and Witkoff, like, oh, we're neutral and we're selling weapons, right? That's not what we need to be. When liberty and democracy are on the line, we should not strive for neutrality. We should be demonstrating American strength. We should be demonstrating that our weapons still work, right? I'm not saying we send in U.S. troops, but we certainly send in U.S. weapons.
So when you say a strong response to invasion of Taiwan, what does that look like?
That means that is where U.S. troops will have to be on the line. The Navy and the Marines will have to be there defending Taiwan as an ally. There is no scenario in which China, let alone being successful of Taiwan, if they destroy Taiwan, it is devastating for the U.S., right? It's devastating for the world, really. But losing all that high-end semiconductor manufacturing is just going to ruin all levels of American industry. It'll hurt the entire world, but I think China sees that they will limp along, right?
That's what
they have enough lower-level semiconductor manufacturing that once you take out the best, who's left, right? The world, which largely depends on microchips these days, is going to have to get them from somewhere. And if not Taiwan, most countries are probably going to go begging to China.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so that's their idea here. And it's not just some fake Chinese unification. Because for those who don't know, Taiwan is the original China. Taiwan was never part of communist China. It was never under the communist revolution.
How do you
So if there was to be a true unification, it would be a no longer communist China reuniting with Taiwan.
Do you have any strong feelings? Someone wrote, Cuba's government said that those those on the boat have a known history of criminal and violent activity, and 2 passengers were wanted by the Cuban authorities, per the Associated Press. So it looks
Well,
like
who are they? Maybe yes, maybe no. We won't be able to say until we know who they are and they can be identified.
Yeah. Do you ever, I'm sure this is like a question in liberalism, but like sometimes it feels like people are bringing their sort of like their baggage from their own country, to this country. And so like, that's not a good way to put it. Let me rephrase that. Let me actually ask a different question. How do you feel about people? So I had this idea. I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'll tell you this idea straight up. I had an interesting idea. I wanted to run it by you. So the idea was that we should sort of, and this is also where a little bit where my like wondering of liberal nationalism comes from. I see that there are some groups that aren't like touched upon very much that like we could appeal to. So like there's like people from South Korea, there's people from Israel and Jews who support Israel. There are all sorts of like other like Japanese people, and all of these people I kind of thought to myself, they all have like some things in common. So first of all, like they all like, and Ukrainians, Iranians are also part of this. They all like sort of like these. They like programs for people who are well educated, and the second thing that they like is they like people who support their home countries. And so I was wondering, is it possible? Does it make sense to sort of like, is there such a thing as a liberal alliance through these people? Because I feel like, on the one hand, you could create a liberal alliance between them, and then on the other hand, you're sort of also like playing a little bit into their, their games back home, if you will, which I don't know how I feel about. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. And so, first of all, we'll go a little bit of difference here. It's okay to like your country, even to favor your country, whether it's your language or whatever. As I said before, nationalism is not patriotism, right? In the words of Mark Twain, the patriot, what is it? Now, and as soon as I say the words of Mark Twain, the quote, of course, goes flying right out of my head. The patriot defends his country all the time and his government when it deserves it, right? So, and that is one of the key differences between a patriot and a nationalist, because a nationalist defends his country all the time, including when his government doesn't deserve it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, a patriot cares about his people, his family, his neighbors. Maybe they want to preserve their language. There's nothing wrong with any of that. The nationalist says, my language is better than your language, and I have to invade your country and wipe it out, right? Because, that's what Russia's doing right now with Ukraine. Like, oh, well, we have to protect the Russians. The ones that you're bombing in Ukraine? No. They're talking about their totalitarian way of life, and the threat that Ukrainian culture poses to them as a people that value liberty and democracy. And patriots of two countries can happily exist side by side. Look at most of Europe, for that matter, right? The German can be a proud German. The Frenchman can be a proud Frenchman. They can trade with each other. They can laugh with each other. They can take vacation together, because one's patriotism does not threaten the other. But two nationalists can never do that. That's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So you can have, let me pick on Israel, because Israel is a country where, if I think of someone that's trying to be kind of the liberal nationalist country, it's probably Israel, which has always had this identity divide between whether they are a modern liberal democracy of equal individual rights where everybody gets a vote, or if they are a purely Jewish nation of some sort, right? Which is opposed by all the Arab nationalism around them. Jewish nationalism of any stripe is not a unique thing in the Middle East. Almost all the Middle Eastern countries are nationalist, usually to a large degree, or at least to a very moderate degree. And so when there's different cultures, whether that's Arabs and Jews, or whether that's Arabs and Kurds, right? Or Turks and Kurds, Persians and Kurds, right? The minority groups, if you don't have the government, then you're getting persecuted, right? Under liberalism, there's no reason to fear persecution. Israel's a country that's kind of stuck with that. They've got minorities who are citizens. Druze minority, Arab minority, even a Vietnamese minority, right? Do they give them equal rights? What does that look like? And how do you do that when you're trying to preserve some notion of a Jewish nation? What is a Jewish nation? Who gets to decide that, right? And that's why, even recently there were a bunch of Israeli soldiers who were attacked in an ultra-religious neighborhood of Jerusalem by ultra-religious Jews because they weren't being Jewish correctly.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and that is, fundamentally the problem of nationalism. And nationalism never has an answer for that. Even when it's successful in periods of history, they push out those minorities who live differently. Well, time rolls on. Eventually the culture tries to change, and then you have to have a split because, if you do things differently, you're not doing it right. And so we see subgroups splintering again and again if they successfully come to power under nationalism, because it can never survive really for more than, a couple generations. The only way nationalism persists over that much time is with a common external threat to unite them.
Yeah. Said the two nationalists can join together if you just look at World War II with the Nazis and the commies, which I thought was like, that's funny.
Yeah.
But it is kind of true.
Yep. They were both socialists. They were both rather nationalist. And of course they had to attack each other. And really, had it gone on far enough, had Hitler been successful in wiping out the Soviet Union, eventually, the Nazis and the Japanese would have had to fight each other.
It's true.
Right? This Aryan supremacy and Japanese supremacy, there was, in the long run, once they carved out their empires, there was no hope of them peacefully coexisting.
That's for sure.
Luckily, liberalism defeated them first.
Yeah. Yes, very fortunate. Alright, it's about 7. I'm fighting like the final boss, so I'm gonna have to wait till tomorrow because I can hear my kids are coming home. Tragic. It's okay. It's okay. We all have sacrifice. Okay. I think we can. Oh, he said, no, I meant Italian nationalists and German nationalists and Japanese nationalists. Yeah.
Well, Italian nationalism was not such a big thing as German nationalism. Probably because Italy as a nation was about 50 years younger, hadn't really settled in, and the people were not as united behind Mussolini, the Italian people, as the Germans were behind Hitler. He was a strong man. He had rule, but he didn't really have the eager support of Italians so much. Which is why a lot of Italians surrendered pretty quickly.
Yeah.
There's kind of that reputation, Italy waved the white flag. And that was because the Italian people didn't want to be fighting for Mussolini or Hitler. The nationalism didn't really catch on as a philosophy there.
And on that note,
in fact, I would say the national identity of Italy kind of caught on more afterwards. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that some European countries and their national identities, like Italy and Germany, aren't actually as old as the United States.
Oh, really? I didn't know that, actually.
Yep.
Their national identity. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, as a nation. So take, for instance, Germany. It's been around, I think, a little more than a century and a half, right? As a united country. Before
Yeah.
that, it was about 15 separate states or so
Like Prussia.
that came together under a common language, and other unifying factors.
Anyway, I'm sorry. So Dave, I have to get going. Thank you guys for watching the stream. Thank you, Dave, for being here as always. And we'll have more tomorrow if you're still here. Tomorrow, I'm gonna be streaming. We're gonna finish the Anne Applebaum video. We're gonna watch a few more Unpopulous videos. I'm playing Resident Evil 9. I'm gonna do some late night, 10 p.m. 10 p.m. PST, 1 a.m. EST, like late night. Gaming. So please join me if you're interested. Other than that, thank you guys, and I'll talk to you all soon. Look at this channel got nuked. I mean, I don't really care. Okay, see you guys.